So for divisibility rules, I believe this is the longest video that we have. Right, all these videos are usually pretty short. So with divisibility rules, what they're always asking you is they'll ask like with some kind of a number when you divide it by some number, does it equal an integer? Right? So that means like does it equal a whole number? Okay, so we're gonna go through all of these. So there's possible ones that you could see are for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 9. So they all have some rules, so there is a little bit of memorization as far as just what the actual rules are. But once you know the rules, the math, I don't think you're going to find to be very hard. Okay, so first we have for 2. Okay, so if you're dividing by 2, if the last number in the numerator, the top number of the fraction, is odd, then it isn't divisible by 2, right? So like for example, if we have 115 divided by 2, when we divide that out, we are going to get not a whole number, not an integer, and so the answer will be wrong. However, when we divide 116 by 2, right, with that last number 6 being even, whenever that last number is even, you divide 116 by 2, you will get an integer. Let's see if I can do this in my head. I believe that number will be 58, right? 58, where 115 divided by 2, it will be 57.5. So you can, play with a calculator on your phone doing this a bunch of times, and I know you will. You'll consistently find every single time when the last number is odd, it always ends up as a decimal. When the last number is even, you always get a whole number or an integer for your answer. Okay, so that's a pretty simple one to remember. Okay, 3 is a little bit trickier. And obviously with all these, like you can actually go ahead and just divide the whole thing out, but it ends up taking a bunch of time, and that can be a problem on these timed exams like you'll be facing. Okay, so for 3, so let's say you get this. So you have 336 divided by 3, right? And the question is, does that number 336 result in an integer? Okay, so you could go ahead and divide the whole thing out, but there's a rule that makes this simpler, which is the rule is if you just add the 3 numbers or however many numbers are in the numerator together and then divide them by 3, that's going to give you your answer as far as whether or not it produces an integer. So in this case, 3 plus 3 plus 6 divided by 3. So 3 plus 3 is 6. 6 plus 6 is 12. 12 divided by 3 is 4. And so we got a good answer. Isn't that amazing? Right? If it ends up being a whole number at the end, then you got yourself a good answer. You want to see another one? And you can always just double check these if you think I don't know what I'm talking about. You can always double check these just with your calculator and dividing them up and seeing if it actually does end up in a whole number. So like with this one, when I see 1017 divided by 3, just by eyeballing it, I would think, no, that's probably not going to be an integer, right? But if we add them up, 1 plus 0 plus 1 plus 7 all over 3. 1 plus 0 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 plus 7 is 9. And 9 divided by 3 is 3. And so it actually still works out. So that's how you do all the 3's, right? Is you just add up the numbers on the top, divide them by what's on the bottom. If it's even, then you're good to go. Try to remember you're not allowed to use a calculator on these. Obviously, that would make it a lot easier. If you just had a calculator and you could do it all in 2 seconds. But if you don't, there's some math reasoning and probably some rules that surprise us if you've never seen that before. Or maybe you just forgot it. Possible as well. All right. 4s. Okay, so with 4s, you take the last 2 digits and you divide by 4. So let's start with an easier one, right? So if I have 32 here, there's only 2 digits in the top number, divided by 4, that equals 8. Right? 8 times 4 is 32. 32 divided by 4 is 8. Okay, what about a trickier one? What if it's 1032 divided by 4? We might be a little less sure that that one equals an integer, right? But all we care about is those last two, right? And again, we just have our 32 divided by 4 is 8, and so that is going to be an integer. And if you went and actually divided it out, you would find that it equals exactly 54. Okay, 5. So 5, except for 2, is probably the easiest one, right? And so your rule for 5 is the number has to end in a 5 or a 0. Okay, if the number ends in a 5 or a 0, then you got yourself a good answer. If it ends in any of the other 8 numbers, no good, right? So, for example, if I'm given the number 55, and they say, is this divisible by 5? We'll know that because it ends in a 5, the answer is yes. And it ends up that 55 divided by 5 is 11. But it really doesn't matter if the number is 55, 1055, 1,055. If it as long as it ends in a 5, right, that last digit, as long as that's a 5 or a 0, then it's divisible by 5, right? So that's all we need to know there for 5s. Give myself some more room again. Okay, so 4 down, 3 to go, right? So really, if you know 2, I'm not saying don't worry about 6, 8, and 9, but if you know 2, 3, 4, and 5, you're probably in pretty good shape. Those are the ones that are the most likely to show up. Okay, for 6 here. So what if our number, remember we just did this a little bit ago with the 3s. So it's 336, right? And if they're saying, is this divisible by 6? Again, you can go ahead and do the math if you want to. But in reality, right, we go through the same thing, 336, so when we divided it, so first you divide it by 3. And if you go ahead and do that, 336 divided by 3, so we did 3 plus 3 was 6, plus 6 was 12, so we had that equals 12 divided by 3, right? And that equaled 4. Okay, so when we have that, if you go ahead and divide that out, 336 divided by 3 equals 4. If this number that you get at the end is even, then you have a good answer. Okay, right? Now, we'll do one other one where it doesn't end up being even. So like if you have 135, it's the only difference between 3s and 6 is if the answer is even, you're good. If the answer is odd, no good. Where with 3s, as long as the answer was an integer at the end, you know, a whole number, then we were good to go. So in this one, 135 divided by 3. So we have 1 plus 3 is 4, plus 5 is 9. So we've got 9 divided by 3, right? 9 divided by 3 is 3. And so we come up with an answer of 3 here. Okay. So now if we were solving for is it divisible by 3, we'd have a good answer here. But because this answer is odd, it's not going to end up in an integer. Sounds crazy that that works out, but if you actually go ahead and calculate it, 135 divided by 3 actually equals 22.5. That can't be right. Anyway, like as you go ahead and calculate it, you will find that once this number is odd, then we do not have the answer that we want. I don't know why I said that it was 22.5. That was clearly wrong. Anyways, we'll move on. Let's see here. Number 8. Okay. So like let's say we get like a number like 100. Okay, and then the question is 100 divisible by 8? Okay, so once we get into like the 8s and 9s, it can be pretty hard to do it in our head, right? And so all you do on these is divide it by 2 twice. All right, so 100 divided by 2 is 50. 50 divided by 2 is 25. Okay, same rule. If this answer is odd, which this one is, then it's a no. So we got no on this guy. If the answer is even, then we have a yes. So an example of that could be, let's take 160, right? Divide that by 2, gives us an 80, right? 160 divided by 2 is 80. Divide it by 2 again, we get 40. And so 40 is even, yeah? And so because of that, this one is a yes. Okay, so divide it by 2 times. If you get an even answer, an even integer, good to go. Odd integer, no good. Okay, that's how we do these. All right, so we got one more left. A lot of rules, huh? A lot of rules. So they're not hard to remember. You just have to put in a little effort to remember what the rules are for each of these. It is worth it to do it, though. It gets you through the test much faster so that you have time for some of the harder questions. And these questions aren't that easy, actually. But again, it's just a question of knowing the rules. Really, that's it. All right, so we got the last one here, 9. Okay, so with 9, so what if we have 118? All right, and it's tempting, and they'll do this to you where you see like that 18, and you're like, yeah, 18 divided by 9 is 2, so that must be yes, right? That's not really how we want to do it, though. Okay, so on these, once again, we add up the 3 digits on the top. 1 plus 1 plus 8, and divide by 9. Divide by what they asked us for. So 1 plus 1 is 2, plus 8 is 10. So 10 divided by 9 is not an integer, so we go with no, right? As long as the answer is an integer, we're good to go. We don't care about odds or evens on this one. All right, 126. We'll look at one more. Again, so we add up the 3, right? So we got 1 plus 2 plus 6 all over 9. Right, so 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 plus 6 is 9. So we have 9 divided by 9, which equals 1. And so this one is a yes, right? So 126 is divisible by 9, where 118 was not. So that gets us to the end of divisibility rules. Obviously, a bunch of different rules to try to commit to your memory. But once you have them committed to your memory, then the math is really straightforward and ends up being a much faster way to get through these tricky questions than trying to actually divide the whole thing out yourself.